Okay, this is gonna be a fucking doozy. Let's see here. Just gonna get everything ready.
To where the
Yeah, I already watched a lot of this video. Get my note. Have this on the side for when we- For those that are watching the stream from the very beginning, I'm just gonna say this right now. I don't hate this guy. I really like his content. I'm very into fitness, and I just got into Mike a month or two ago, I think, and I really like him. I already pre-watched this video to see what he was gonna say, and it gets kind of fucking rough. I'm not gonna lie, but we're gonna do some research and shit, and then I'm going to record some stuff later for an upcoming video talking about the main points of this video. There might be like some of it I'm probably gonna actually cut out because it's just kind of comparing countries and stuff with the index of economic freedom and shit. So let's just get right into this one.
then we're going to talk about the downsides of communism. Sure, shit has those, and then the way forward of how to think about this issue, well, remotely, rationally. So, defining terms is difficult in this regard. One of the reasons that it's difficult to define terms in discussing communism is there's kind of a constellation of terminology in what I would call hard left political and economic. I struggle to use the term theory. Because theory, in my definition, is a well-confirmed framework of facts supported by evidence. There's not really any of that in here. I would say model. Model's a good thing to say. So the hard left economic and social model uses a lot of terms that are some combination of seemingly not definable, definitions that are greatly overlapping, definitions which various sources have defined differently, and definitions for which it's really hard to pin down exactly what's being discussed, sort of a distinction without a difference kind of thing.
That is
So,
true. That is definitely true. There's a lot of different variations and definitions and stuff, and not all leftists agree upon it. The big one, for me at least, is Marxism Leninism. There's a lot of debate on whether that's actually communism or not, and I have the hot take, especially in like Western left spheres, that it is, but it's just the bad kind of communism. Obviously, we all fucking know why. We all hate the USSR and shit. But yeah, he's not particularly wrong about that. But as you can see, not as you can see, as you'll see going throughout this video, you're going to notice he really, really focuses on centrally planned communism, in particular Marxism Leninism, which is the main ideology that has been predominantly used in most socialist countries to take power and shit, I guess you can say. Um But yeah, that's what he really heavily focuses on. You're not going to see him talk about decentralized socialism or decentralized communism or anarcho communism at all. And it's possibly because he was only focusing on the shit that's actually been tried. But at the same time, if you're going to be talking about communism, you should at least bring up the fact that there is decentralized communism like anarcho communism, council communism, possibly shit like that. I feel like it would have been better if he went over that kind of stuff because I'm generally interested in seeing what he thinks about decentralization and shit. But let's see what he has to say about this one.
um, the what I would call sort of leftist hard left linguistics are sort of very unhelpful in this regard because they're mostly, I think, at least in some sense, some of them are kind of architected purposefully to obviate receiving criticism. For example, if you criticize socialism, someone tells you, no, you're criticizing communism. If you're criticizing communism, someone's like, well, actually, you're talking about socialism. Communism is a lot different. And then
Um, the big one is probably you're talking about state capitalism with a lot of leftists in the West, at least.
there's also this difference in the terminology of uh, communism and socialism as idealized future states versus imposed current policy.
One
It's
second, I'm gonna go get my water real quick. Okay, I'm back.
It's akin to being like, like, hey, does this squat exercise look like it has good technique? They would say, well, if you were an Olympic gym,
Wait, I should actually check if my audio is good first. I always make sure to check that just in fucking case something bad is going on. Gonna just play the stream real quick on my phone. How am I not? Okay, there we go.
socialism as idealized future states.
Okay, yeah, that should be good. Let me turn down my mic just a bit, just so it doesn't pick up whatever's playing in the background. Bring it a little bit closer. I'm using it right here, by the way, the Elgato Wave. I fucking love this thing.
Gymnast would be good, and ideally, some point you can get to that technique. But right now, it actually is quite terrible. And then you're like, okay, so what exactly is this specific technique? Or sort of very unhelpful in this
I'm gonna write down notes for this, by the way.
regard, because they're mostly, I think, at least in some sense, some of them are kind of architected purposefully to obviate receiving criticism. For example, if you criticize socialism, someone tells you, no, you're criticizing communism. If you're criticizing communism, someone's like, well, actually, you're talking about socialism, and communism is a lot different. And then there's also this difference in the terminology of uh, communism and socialism as idealized future states versus imposed current policy. It's akin to being like, like, hey, does this squat exercise look like it has good technique? They would say, well, if you were an Olympic gymnast, it would be good. And ideally, some point you can get to that technique. But right now, it actually is quite terrible. And then you're like, okay, so what exactly is the specific technique of the squat? And I said, well, actually, it depends. And then is conversation socialism, and then you don't even know what you're talking about.
He's not, like I said, he's not wrong. So I'll just put.
Um, Sometimes they just don't accept your criticism whatsoever. They don't accept any definitions. You propose a definition on communism or socialism, you'll be in an infinite debate about what they mean, and you'll never get any traction anywhere.
That's true.
And this would be an interesting case if it was just that internally and externally there was a lot of consistency in the hard left nomenclature, but I was ignorant to this nomenclature and sort of like, right wing troll, not so smart person just hand waving away like it's all saying to me, man. It's what my grandfather was doing with his gun back in Korea. God damn it, that's the people he was hurting. That's all I know. There's just fucking everyone's a communist. Like that's just not the case. I consider myself quite well educated, at least from a kind of a dilettante perspective on these matters. And I haven't really seen any internally or externally consistent use of language or much of it in the hard left circles. And a lot of this language.
It really depends on who you're talking to. There's a lot of infighting and shit among the left because of the different definitions. And there's like a bazillion different fucking theorists and shit, well, with similar but different at the same time definitions of various terms and ideas. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of like leftist infighting. You can just follow whichever one. It doesn't really fucking matter, but it is definitely hard to communicate with like the left as a group as a whole because of all these differences. But if you do really want to kind of get involved in talking about like leftism or anything like that, it would be better to talk to individual people and their definitions first rather than just kind of ignoring, I guess, the entire group altogether because of the conflicting definitions and stuff. For the most part, we're kind of similar on the on definitions. The issue is just kind of like the itty bitty details for the most part, honestly.
Is folks that on the hard left will use, you will see it on the comments, I almost guarantee. And it's actually not language that's very accepted or accepted at all, or without a huge amount of controversy in mainstream economics. For example,
Yeah.
a lot of what you'll hear is about late stage capitalism. That's a common concept very hard left communist folks talk about, or the socialist folks. I never can tell. And late stage capitalism is one of those things that cannot possibly be well defined. I think it was variously defined by some older theoreticians, folks from 100 years ago. And all of their predictions just didn't come to pass. And now it's looking like capitalism just kind of spreading all over the world, and socialism / communism really start to suck. Started to suck generations ago.
We're definitely going to delve into that about whether communism and socialism as a whole sucks or if it's a specific subset of it.
they're now well past the point of having proven themselves largely ineffectual. So the idea of late stage capitalism is very difficult to pin down exactly what that is. When is the late stage? What happens? What happens next? There's some actual finite predictions of how does a system work and what do you expect it to do next. It's very difficult to drag out of folks on this very extreme side of the political aisle. Another term is state capitalism. And so you accuse China of being communist, people come back and say it's not communism, it's state capitalism. I'm not exactly sure what state capitalism means. Good news, most mainstream economists don't know what it means either, because it's
Okay, it's pretty fucking simple what state capitalism is. State capitalism is capitalism where pretty much all of the means of production are controlled by the state for profit, is how I would define it at least. And that technically fits the definitions of pretty much every single supposedly socialist countries. The issue is whether you would consider state capitalism a form of communism, like in terms of it's the most pragmatic form of communism that you can get within a world which is predominantly ruled by capitalism, or if you don't consider it communism because of the profit motive and because of these certain aspects of it. I would probably fall into the camp of just saying, yeah, it's kind of like as close you could get to certain forms of uh, essentially planned communism as you can get, because it's really it's kind of like impossible at this point to be able to operate in a for use system. Pretty much everything has to be for profit in some form or another, especially when you're a big country like the fucking USSR or China or whatever. Um, so it does really depend on who you ask though, because a lot of socialists will say the USSR or China or whatever is actually state capitalist because there's privatized means of production, there's profit motive, blah blah blah. And then you'll have like tankies, for example, calling it communist because of the overarching central planned aspects of the economy. And it's kind of like the closest thing to communism you can get within a capitalist world. So it's technically communism. It really does depend, honestly, on who you ask, which kind of fucking sucks. I really wish there was more unity in the left, but gotta deal with what you have, I guess.
essentially a term that's used almost exclusively by hard left theoreticians and is sort of kind of something is a deflection term. You've got to say anything that's going bad for you is state capitalism. Anything that's going good for you, which really never does, is definitely true socialism or true.
Yeah, that's kind of an issue, I would say, with the left. And that's why I generally stay away from calling the USSR or Maoism or whatever the fuck as state capitalism. It is, don't get me wrong. But when speaking to somebody in terms of like using layman terms and shit, I just say it's communism for the sake of simplicity and not getting into a debate about whether it's communism or not, because it really doesn't fucking matter at the end of the day. Uh if you denounce whatever the fuck it was, then you denounce whatever the fuck it was. It doesn't really fucking matter whether it was communism or not. You don't like it. There's no reason in kind of going circles about whether it was or not. What do you actually get out of that? Especially from the position of a leftist who's trying to convince the other person to follow your ideology. You don't really get anything out of that kind of conversation. So I just personally try to avoid it altogether. But that's just me.
True communism or whatever you have it. I don't like to deal with the linguistics bullshit at all because I've been trying to deal with it for probably about 20 years now, made no sense of it. I don't think it's a thing that is supposed to make sense. This is why mainstream economists are largely not Marxists, because there's a lot of gobbledygook in there that makes no fucking sense at all. So what
There's a lot of gobbledygook that goes on in with a lot of economists as well, like not Marxist economists. There's a lot of different types of economists. They generally lean liberal, but there's a lot of varying degrees of liberalism, capitalism. There's different kinds of capitalism, like welfare capitalism. There's laissez-faire capitalism. There's fucking rainbow capitalism. All these different kinds of capitalisms as well. So even with like modern economists, I do think there is some of that issue in there as well. But it's just kind of like a little bit more cohesive because capitalism has become so well established.
modern economists do, and what I'm trying to do here, is to define communism more directly in a way that can be empirically verified by data. So I
Mhm. Well, like the issue with that is there's just one form of it that has been actually implemented several times. And then the issue is there's all these other ideas which have just been left in the dust for various reasons, unfortunately. So you can say communism's been tried and shit and failed, but the issue with that is there's a bunch of other forms of communism and socialism and anarchism which have yet to be tried and haven't failed because they haven't even been tried yet. And as you're going to see here, he's going to focus very heavily on the ones that have failed and not really address the ones that haven't even been tried yet at all. I'm not sure if it's because he doesn't know what decentralized economies are, or if it's just because he kind of wants to focus on central planning, or what.
I prefer to define communism as, or the spectrum of what is not communism, all the way to communism, is the degree of government control of the economy. High degrees of control are more communist, lower degrees of control are less communist, or more free market. And in this case,
Uh,
because it's communism, because there's other ways of controlling an economy that are not communist. Fascism is one, for example. Communist is a high degree of control of the economy, with at least a major purpose of that to have the goal of maximizing wealth redistribution. Right?
yeah, it really fucking depends on who you ask, especially when it comes to like different kinds of communists, because in terms of the Marxist definition of communism, what Marx envisioned, that's not even fucking close. There's not even supposed to be a state under communism. There's not supposed to be wealth under communism, at least as how Marx envisioned it. What he's going over is mainly the implemented version of Marxism, Leninism, Stalinism, Maoism. They all kind of just fucking blend together and kind of overall mean pretty much the same thing. That's why a bunch of tankies love those forms of communism, but he's going over the very, very bad version of it. And I get that he's doing it because that's the version that has been tried. But at the same time, you're going over communism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You should at least cover the other forms of communism that haven't been tried, like council communism, anarcho-communism, those kinds of forms of communism, or even maybe some forms of like anarchism or socialism or whatever. Maybe touch on those a little bit, but he's going to be going heavily over Marxism Leninism, which is the specific form of communism that has been implemented. I lost my train of thought there.
That's what communism is in practice. It's close enough to the theoreticals of communism behind
What?
all the jargon. That's like, okay, generally, there's a free economy. Communists want to come in and make it not free.
What do you mean? The economy isn't really free right now. Market economies, if we're talking about what's going on right now, aren't necessarily free. They're being controlled predominantly by a group of people at the top who are very lucky to have created something or gotten a lucky break like 20, 30 years ago, like Jeff Bezos and all these other fucking people who innovated one time or maybe a few times and got lucky and have just kind of been sitting on their hands, sniffing their ass, sniffing their farts and shit ever since then. I wouldn't say we live under a free economy even under our current one because of that, because it's being controlled by corporations and big dudes, big wigs. In a sense, how do I put this? Uh the current form of market economy that we have right now, at least in America, is kind of similar to that of um the USSR in a certain sense, because the USSR is centrally planned, and that means a certain uh, class of people at the top. Marxist Leninists wouldn't call it a class, but let's be real, it is a class. A class of central planners at the top determine where everything go. That's the same thing that we have here for the most part. Sure, consumers will have a certain degree of say, but a lot of it comes down to the people at the top who are kind of strongly influencing the demand of certain products with certain tactics like artificial scarcity, planned obsolescence, kind of fucking over previous products to make more up-to-date products, like with the Apple iPhone, for example. Constantly manipulating the market that way to get people to buy specific products. So consumers do have like a certain degree of freedom under markets, the market economy. But if you get a certain amount of people into positions of power with a lot of fucking wealth and shit, then it kind of just becomes less free. It kind of drifts a little bit closer and closer to something like a centrally planned economy, except instead of the government doing it, it's private individuals. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see what else he says because I kind of forgot some of the shit. I'm also a little bit tired right now, so what I'm saying isn't formulated the best. I'll be making a actual, like, edited video on this as time goes on, because I'm just kinda busy with shit. I have the NASM shit I have to do for my career and stuff, so a video on this is gonna be coming out soon, eventually.
It's the only way to work communism because if you tell people what to do and they just don't do it, you got to have the force of government behind it. So you take control of the government, which is how every single communist revolution works. You get control of the
Yeah,
military.
that's called a dictatorship of the proletariat. The issue with that is the proletariat doesn't actually take control of it, and a group of central planners and dictators and shit do, which is very different from the Marxist uh version of communism and more the Lenin and Stalin shit.
And the police, and then you impose a rule of law, some kind of will on the people. And at
That's
least
kind of what we do right now, isn't it?
on paper, that rule of law is imposed to try to take wealth away from the wealthiest people and redistribute it so there's a more even distribution of wealth among all people in society, right? And the good thing is very much on the degree of government control of the economy, and to a large extent, the fraction of government control that goes to try to redistribute wealth is something we can measure in quantitative indices. There are multiple indices. The Heritage Foundation runs an index of economic freedom. The Fraser Institute runs a Freedom of the World index. There's a few others, including social freedom.
He's going to be relying heavily on the Heritage Foundation's economic freedom index, by the way. I'm just going to put that out there right now. It's a little spoiler, which I think he's going to be using that as a form of measurement for the quality of life. And he's going to be talking a lot about different incomes, comparing socialist countries to capitalist countries. But I'm going to summarize it right now because I don't really need to go into all of his examples to kind of get this point across. That's a very specific way of looking at this topic that takes out all the nuance. The economic freedom index doesn't go over things like healthcare. It doesn't go over education. It doesn't go over like basic necessities actually being met. It just goes over stuff like how much money you're making, the freedom for businesses to start up and shit like that, I believe. It doesn't really go over stuff that directly impacts the civilians in a way that is that's in a way that's visible, like seeing how many people fucking die from a lack of healthcare, education, how many people are fucking stupid because the education system in X country is super shitty or whatever. So he's gonna be looking at it from a very money perspective, which is typical of capitalists. So I don't really blame him for that, but it's not very nuanced. There's a lot more complexity on this topic. And actually, I should probably just kind of skip over to it whenever it comes up. Or maybe I should say it now so I don't forget about it. But of course, he's not going to take things like iso socialist countries being isolated. He's not going to take sanctions into account. He's not going to take foreign interference into account for any of these countries, especially for something like Cuba, which he does go over. He's not going to cover the sanctions on them. He's not going to cover the stigmatization. Nobody wants to fucking do business with them or anything like that. They're kind of being starved of resources in a way. He's not going to go over any of that for any of the countries that he lists in this video, which I might just skip over because it's the same point dragged on for like maybe 30 minutes or so. I don't really know. I didn't keep track, but it's the same thing, just kind of like listing a bunch of different examples. But yeah, it's lacking a lot of nuance in taking away a lot of nuance regarding how they got there and shit.
As well that I'm familiar with. So this is one of these things in which statistics can be done. Economists regularly collect data. They measure where countries are, and it's a spectrum, all the way from very free economies, for example, to very state-run, very controlled economies. And that's a really good proxy for us trying to figure out who's more communist and who's not. Now, some countries, which are very unfree, are also not very communist because they don't have wealth redistribution as a big priority for them. But we can parse those out and stick to countries which ideologically present themselves as left-wing communist socialist countries. That's in their charter, it's in their constitution, what have you. China, for example, they're avowedly a communist country. And we can now measure these countries and see, like, are they really as communist as they say, or significantly more so? And the free
Well,
countries.
I mean, the issue is, again, he's using only one very specific kind of definition of communism, which really benefits capitalist narrative. He's not really taking any nuance into the equation. He's not covering uh the Marxist definition, which if you can literally just fucking look this shit up. A political theory derived from Marx, advocating class war and leading to a society in which all public property is publicly owned. He doesn't go over that. And each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs. Doesn't really go over that. Well, actually, he kind of does. Let's see here. It's basically a moneyless, cashless, stateless society, which are the three main pillars of communism, which he does not talk about at all. He seems to really focus on the wealth aspect of communism, which is weird because most forms of communism, except for like maybe Marxism Leninism as it was implemented, don't have wealth. The entire point of communism is to abolish wealth because wealth creates different economic classes, which, you know, issues with that I don't really need to get into because you know the issues with fucking class struggles and shit.
They're not just free countries because bald eagles fly over them. They're like, America, god damn it. That's not really freedom. That's just patriotism. It can be applied to any other country. But we can now
America.
measure economic freedom so well in all these indices that we can say, like, actually, yes, your claim to being a largely free market country is correct. And as a matter of fact, we can rank you with all the other countries on how that goes. So if you ever want to go to the Index of Economic Freedom, Heritage Foundation is an excellent source. Probably technically biased, a little bit more right wing than I would ideally love, but it's quite.
They're very staunchly conservative. They're not a little biased. They're like hyper biased. They're like McCarthyism They're like McCarthyism levels of bad.
Good. There's the Fraser Institute, which is probably more centrist and probably to more
I
folks
haven't really
liking.
touched on them.
You can
So.
explore the indices and see what you find. It's actually quite awesome. But there have been, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of technical economic papers written off of these indices and of other more specific indices and various econometric data collected from countries that have various degrees of government control and various degrees of trying to use the government in order to get the income relatively similar among all people, wealth redistribution, income redistribution. So we know a lot about this. We can just go straight to the data. So if you tell me, well, that's not real communism, I'll just say, like, well, it looks like the index of economic freedom is really low, and it looks like they do a lot to try to keep the salaries of various employees similar. So it's actually.
Oh boy. Yeah, like I said, he's very hung up on the wealth redistribution stuff. Even though the whole point of communism is to destroy wealth. There's not supposed to be wealth under communism. Wait, actually, I said that he goes over the each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs thing. He doesn't go over that at all now that I think about it. He's very focused on the government forcing everybody to be poor and shit kind of talking points. Which is bullshit because if you look at Marxist communism, not Marxist Leninist, which is I don't even think he brings up that once. He doesn't even bring up different forms of communism once. He's just very focused on this one single strain of communism, which pretty much all of the Western left hates outside of like tankies and shit. And even then, they're laughed out of fucking leftist circles all the time. Yeah, this is gonna be really fucking painful to watch.
On a scale of this is totally not communism and this is the most pure form of communism ever tried.
It's the thing. Yeah, the thing is, a lot of Western leftists are going to say it's not communism because of the profit motive and the privatization and the state control kind of thing. That is a bad way of going about this, especially to non-communists or people who are kind of scared by McCarthyism shit. You need to communicate to to people like Mike Israetel. Hey, communism is not that simple. It is not as simple as government control and redistributing wealth. There is more to it than that. There is eliminating wealth. There is eliminating class. There's eliminating the state. There's eliminating oppression. All of this blah 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 kind of shit. I'm not gonna read the fucking Das Kapital off to you right now, but it is there's a lot to communism in various strains of it.
Your country, whatever that is, it's right here. So it's much more true to say that it's communist than to say that it's not communist. So that is what it is. That's the kind of definition we'll be using here. Now,
Well, it's very easy to smear the communism as a whole if you're just using a definition which doesn't really fit what most communists actually even believe to begin with. You're just focusing on a very easy to poke at strain of communism. It would be like me saying that capitalism is whatever the fuck America does, and it's really easy to pick apart how bad America's economy is and how much corruption there is in our markets. And it's like generalizing that for the entire world, which is kind of fucking stupid because there are other capitalist countries who are not as corrupt as America when it comes to markets and corporate corruption and shit. But yeah, it's just kind of like doing that, which is a relatively bad faith tactic on socialist end, which he's going to be doing against the left.
Being that we got the linguistics out of the way and the definitions, let's
I
go
kind
to
of want to see what he has to say about anarchism next. I really want to see what he thinks about that.
the upsides of communism. There are upsides.
Okay, he's going to
First,
be going over parts. What he's going to be going over here is just fucking welfare. Welfare isn't really a thing in communism necessarily because the community provides to each other pretty much, right? It's not a state that provides to everybody. It's the community that helps each other and shit, right? But he seems to conflate welfare with communism, which is not really the case. Communists support welfare right now because it's like, what the fuck else are we supposed to do? A lot of people aren't willing to just give away their wealth and shit. A lot of rich people aren't willing to give away their wealth and shit to help everybody out. So it's kind of like we have to do that in order to help people under our current fucking fucked up system. That's the only reason why we support welfare right now. If we got what we wanted in terms of our long-term goals, there wouldn't be a need for welfare because everybody would be helping each other out.
communism is big on a social safety net.
I mean, technically, you can say that if you consider social safety net being the community providing for each other. Each community, like communities, small communities and shit, providing for each other. Not a big, massive federal government giving everybody basic necessities and shit. That's nice and all, but that's not the long-term goal because we all know what happens if a government gets too much fucking power.
Some social safety nets can have a net positive return on investment for everyone, just paying taxes into the social safety net. Why? Homelessness. Homelessness is nasty, even to not homeless people. So if you are purely selfish
Yeah, that is true.
and you just don't like to see homelessness around because it's gross to people living it, it's real gross. To you walking by with your rich guy hat, disgusting. Scoot him off with your cane. It's also gross to you. If we use some social safety net and make sure there are no homeless people, that
I
generally
forgot to fucking put notes down. I'll probably just watch back this stream, I guess. Fuck writing down notes. That's for pussies.
seems to be a positive return on investment for everyone. So that seems like just a nearly correct answer. And yes, it's a little communist, it's a little socialist-like, but maybe that makes some sense.
Oh wait, is this fucking? Is my
Another
mic
one is
picking
just
up?
from the perspective of an individual.
Is my mic picking up the fucking thing?
Around.
I'm gonna turn down my thing over here real quick.
Citizen or individual resident of a country, and if knowing that your government's got your back, if worse comes to worse, and you can have some food and a
There we
place to
go.
stay and some basic medical care, knowing you'll never starve to death unless the whole society goes under, can be a huge stress reducer for the whole population, especially folks kind of at the bottom of their ability to produce wealth. And so, at the very least, you don't have to like lay awake at night thinking, Jesus Christ, what am I going to eat tomorrow? That might be handled for you, and that basic level of support from a government.
He's
can be like
basically
an
just saying that welfare nets are good and shit, and kind of listing off why, which is good. I agree with him on that. Not as a long-term goal, but it's definitely something that we need right fucking now. Let's see, here we go.
through various genetic and environmental effects, just might not be able to care for themselves. And that
Oopsies.
maybe it's a proper role of government to step in and help them care for themselves. For example, very elderly people that have no one to turn to. You don't have children, or your children moved out of the country, or they're not alive anymore, or you had sullied relations with them. You're 89 years old. You really can't walk to the store anymore to get your food. And you live on a fifth floor, staircase only situation. Like, it'd be nice if someone helped you, took care of you, make sure that you had some good years in left. It'd be really fucked up to know, like, yeah, there's tons of old people dying in that skyscraper. Who gives a shit? Fuck them. They'll clear them out. They'll let the cat eat it for a while and they'll clear it out. And that's really fucked up. Some people, and this is a point that Jordan Peterson kind of made a little bit famous when he touched on it very briefly. I'll get into
Jordan
it probably just as
Peterson,
briefly as he
fucking
did.
hate him.
The ability to produce enough wealth to pay for your basic needs is just a very simple math formula. It is your basic needs have been counted up by a variety of global organizations, World Health Organization, United Nations, and actually put a price tag on how much it costs to keep a person alive and basically housed and cared for with essential medicines on average per day. And it's just really not that much money. It's something like, $2,000, actually being very charitable here. It's like $2,000 a year for the average human to be able to produce enough wealth for themselves to take care of their basic needs. The thing is, IQ, for example, intelligence quotient, how much sense people can make out of their environments, how well they can intellectually problem solve in their environments, it lies on a normal distribution, which is most people around 100 of IQ. The standard deviation is 15, which means something like 2/3 of the people will be somewhere between 85 IQ.
Kind of boring.
Everyone. You get below IQ 75, 70, 65, the IQ scale as originally derived was as a 10-year-old. They're capable of handling 10-year-old type problems. They're capable of abstracting no greater than a 10-year-old. Everything can work at some distant future when we're insanely wealthy. and that no one's either hungry or homeless or totally bereft of medical care or they're so unable to care for
Yes,
themselves.
yes, we
A
know.
different interpretation of the technical data on the subject. I don't know, like that's happened like twice. Almost everyone who has very, very strong political views is feeling their way towards those views. And one of the things
Oh, wait a
I know
second.
almost
That's
no
right. We need to go back a bit,
one,
I
almost no
think.
one I've ever had political debates with to where there are absolutely use cases for socialism.
He's gonna talk about how using a lot of the left is very like, well, not even just the left. He talks about like pretty much everybody is very emotions driven when it comes to their political views. Let's just watch it first.
Specifically in sort of making sure that bottom end of the safety net works effectively and that no one's either
Yada
hungry
yada.
or
Yada.
no thanks, not in modern society. So those are the upsides, and that's kind of the thing that gets socialists in, or people who think about socialism and get into it politically, or they're drawn to it emotionally. So first of all, you might have heard me say this before, but almost all political leanings are purely emotional in nature. I know almost
I would say, yeah. Um, a lot of people are driven very much by emotions, and then um, kind of just look to whatever data benefits their agenda the most, kind of thing. But let's finish this real quick.
almost no one I've ever had political debates with to where the reason that they hold their opinion is a different interpretation of the technical data on the subject. I don't know, like that's happened like twice. Almost everyone who has very, very strong political views is feeling their way towards those views. And one of the things about socialism that people really feel their way towards is that appeal of the social safety.
I think that's just the appeal of the social safety. It's not really socialism in general. Socialism in general strongly focuses on abolishing the bourgeoisie or whatever, the fucking owner class, the employers and everything. Abolish that and give us, the workers, the power. That's what socialism really focuses on. The stuff like the social safety net and all of the other details kind of just varies between socialist ideologies. But the big thing that we really care about is giving us more power over our workplaces, which I don't think he even touches on that aspect, which is like the big thing of socialism. The big thing of socialism is giving us power, but he won't fucking touch on that. Um, but yeah, a lot of people are very emotionally driven when it comes to their political leanings. Um, some people definitely cherry pick data that benefits their narrative, especially conservatives. The issue is they're all fucking idiots and don't even read the shit that they post. Um, but there's a lot of data regarding like social safety nets and shit that shows they actually do help a lot, especially right now.
Uh, that's almost everyone I think who gets into socialism for the right reasons, which is most people. They get in there because they look at the poor and they look at the downtrodden and they look at the folks that can't care for themselves and the elderly and they go, Jesus fucking Christ, we gotta help these people. And there's a rich guy that fucking owns his own steamboat and he's like, man, see, he doesn't need all that money and fuck him, right? And there's a lot of there's a lot of heartfelt emotion there that's just fucking true. It's right. Like you should disturb you to see that someone's fucking on their hands and knees, barely able to scrape by. 100%.
Yet that's just like everybody. That's not even just socialism. That's, well, not everybody. There's like fucking idiots out there who don't believe in welfare because they're psychopaths. But for most people, this is something that can really be applied to like social democratic shit too, like social democracy, which is what Scandinavia and a lot of Europe is.
Too many socialists that like socialism because on the technical grounds it's an efficient way to run an economy where its long-term capacity for wealth production is higher or anything.
It depends on, what did he say?
Socialists that like socialism because on the technical grounds it's an efficient way to run an economy.
It's a very efficient way to run the economy depending on what ideology you follow. Like I, for example, am kind of sitting between collectivist anarchism and participatory economics, which are two different ways, which, while they haven't been implemented yet, at least on paper, sound like very, very efficient ways to run the economy compared to market economics. And I'm not saying that to like throw markets out entirely. I've kind of moved a bit away a bit from market abolitionists and currently kind of like there are aspects of it we can possibly use, which I kind of deviate, which is why I kind of sit between collectivism and Pericon at the moment. But when it comes to like decentralization decentralization just in general, whether it's decentralized markets, decentralized planning, whatever, I would view that as a very, at least on paper, again, it hasn't really been tried at all. The only form of socialist ideology which has been tried are all very centrally planned systems, which is what he covers. And I do agree with a lot of his issues with centrally planned economies that he's going to be bringing up, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to like socialism in general, not really too bad of an idea. When you get into the nitty gritty and focus on specific ideologies, it ranges. Which he's not going to go over the nuance of that at all. So
or its long-term
I would really like to see him talk to actual like
capacity for wealth.
whoops actual theorists and Marxist economists. Holy fuck, or maybe even me. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of nuance being taken out of this discussion with him.
Production is higher, or anything like that, or aligns better
Again, we want to abolish wealth.
with political theory. I haven't met hardly any socialists like that at all. Most people will sprinkle in justifications for it, but the real reason they're for it is that social safety net, which is why a lot of socialist, communist, whatever hard left.
You can just get a social safety net under capitalism. That's just called social democracy. There's literally a form of capitalism called welfare capitalism. This isn't really this isn't even necessarily a socialist idea. This is just a basic common sense idea.
Folks in the United States, especially if you ask them, like, well, what country is doing it well? Since it's not America, since we're evil capitalist bald eagles taking children off the street, evil.
Yes, we are definitely evil.
Darth Vader's empire.
I'm not at campus. We have our moments.
What's the real way to do it? They're like, well, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, they do great. They're real socialist economies. It turns out that couldn't be further from the truth.
I remember when there was a time when a lot of people said that like Scandinavia was socialist and shit. And I think this was back when I was a social democrat. Like fucking Bernie Sanders and AOC and shit said that Scandinavia was socialist, and even then I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's gonna bring up valid points as to why they're not socialist, but like if you want, like, they're social democratic. They're not socialist. They're social democratic, which is basically welfare capitalism.
Every single one of those economies has at least been, or is currently, more economically free than the United States. That's right. In most years, Denmark is more capitalist than the United States. It's a free economy, free market.
I don't think that makes them more that makes them more free, that makes them more laissez-faire. But capitalism is just a economic system in which the means of production are privatized and the system is operating for profit rather than for use, which basically means the whole purpose of operating under capitalism is to make more money, make more profit, the profit motive, blah 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 blah. So I don't really understand this unless you think capitalism just means free markets and shit.
They have less banking regulation, less trade regulation almost every year compared to the United States. There you go. And it throws a wrench into my bald eagle shit. What is going on? What do they have in those countries? They have strong social safety nets. If we can do that, take that good from socialism, we can discard with all the bad from socialism and have the best of both worlds. And TLDR, kind of a preview, the Nordic countries do kind of have the best of both worlds. And a lot of other countries in the world do. And so now we have this.
From what I've heard, at least, there is still a lot of problems with like capitalist corruption in like European countries and shit. There's of course the issue of class struggle. There's probably, since there are like a lot less regulations, you're probably going to have a lot more exploitation of the workers on an individual level. I'm not sure specifically what regulations are lacking there, but if there's something like OSHA, they don't have like an equivalent of OSHA regulations or anything like that, then there's some fucking big problems over there. I need to become a little bit more well read on that though, to be able to confidently say that whether it is or not.
Modern consensus of how to properly run an economy, which takes the good stuff from socialism and leaves out the rest. So let's talk about the rest, what we're leaving out, the downsides.
Oh boy.
There are a few critical quintessential downsides, non-starters to communism. To me, the biggest one, I'll list all the ones that I'm familiar with. Please list them in the comments if you have any.
Oh boy.
To me, the biggest thing about communism that's bad is that it is unable to efficiently allocate scarce resources that have alternative uses.
I'm gonna be saying this a lot. It really does fucking depend on who you're asking and what ideology under communism you're talking about. If you have a decentralized economy, decentralized communism like anarcho-communism, which is like the go-to for decentralized communism, I would say that's a lot more efficient than what we have now, even though I'm not an ANCOM, I'm not a libertarian communist, I'm a anarchist. I would view that as a lot more efficient than something like a centrally planned economy, which is what he's going to be going over. And that's kind of like the big thing he's going to be focusing. Like I said, that's the big thing he's focusing on. And the thing is, I will agree with a lot of his upcoming objections to centralized planning. But let's see.
Nearly as well as market-oriented price systems do. So you got freer markets and you got less free markets. You got more government control of the economy, you got less. Just on the numbers, you can treat these like two different kinds of cars. You got a 4-cylinder, you got an 8-cylinder. Which one cranks the horsepower harder? This answer there's no question about it. It's been something that's been solved in mainstream economics for, well, it was already solved before the Soviet Union collapsed in roughly 1991. But after the collapse and we got to see all the data from how the economies were actually faring, it's gone like an over the top mode of like, this is for sure a thing that communism definitely sucks ass at producing wealth and orienting the economy in such a way that is maximally efficient.
Why is your um why is your main measurement for measuring how successful a communist economy is? I'm not saying this as a defense of centralized planning in general, but this is just kind of like a little gripe that I have. Using wealth as the only measurement of success, what if they had better conditions in just like healthcare and all this other shit? You don't need to be wealthy to have a good quality of life. And I've at least seen some papers saying that they actually had better quality of life in certain aspects compared to like America, the USSR is what I'm referring to, like healthcare, access to food and water and shit. Apparently, that might have been better than America. I would really have to double check the sources on that because I have seen certain data that indicates that they had better quality of life in some areas than even America, at least at the time.
And let me be very clear about something. A lot of people think efficiency and they think like robots telling you where to go and 9 to 5, and you look at your wife and it could be another person who cares. We're just all cogs in a wheel. Nonsense. Efficiency means less waste. Efficiency means that for everything the society tries to create, more of that benefits the people in the society. Straight up. Efficiency is good for everybody. Doesn't matter what you want.
Well,
Efficiency.
yeah, that is absolutely true. I will agree on that. The issue is whether a market economy is efficient, which I would have to say probably not.
Is better for it in the economy. So, because communism is so bad at scarcely allocating alternative uses, it makes huge problems with efficiency and thus keeps people poorer than they need to be at any one given time, and also greatly impacts the forward-looking economic growth prospects. So not only are communist countries poorer, everyone in the country is poor, except for the people at the top. They always get by. It doesn't matter.
Again, I'm not sure if I should approach this from like defending centrally planned economies in terms of like just being contrarian, or if I should just keep coming at this from a that's not the kind of communism that most people support or what. There's kind of a few different ways of tackling this, to be honest, and it's really fucking hard to decide what I should uh attack this topic from. What angle to attack it from, I mean.
Matter what economy structure you have. Not
Because
only are
there's
these countries
various ways of refuting this, but for the next little while, he's just kind of be comparing various countries, and like I said earlier, taking out the nuance of why a lot of these centrally planned economies failed.
poor,
But I don't know, man. It's really fucking tough to decide.
but the rate at which they're increasing their wealth and thus their per capita income is also much lower. Freer market, more capitalist countries, not only are they richer, but they also grow faster. And so in the long
We
run,
are like
10, 20, 30,
okay, let's just put it okay. We are one of the richest countries in the world, right? We have like a big GDP per capita thing. America is fucking big boy. We're like the richest country in the world. Blah 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 blah. Look at how our country is turning out right now. We have a tenth of our population is completely uninsured. There is when it comes to like the people who are poor, they have to decide between fucking food, health insurance, bills, etc. Wages have stagnated as the cost of living has trended upwards. It might be going down a little bit right now because of inflation and shit, but for a lot of people, they're still struggling. And this is going to become a problem for decades to come unless we change something. If we're talking about whether or not a country, uh, if we're talking about uh, a country being better because it's wealthier or produces more wealth, take a look at fucking America. We're shit right now. Our country's going down to shitter because of several different fucking reasons.
30 years, choosing your country as communist versus as relatively free market is a huge impact on actual people's lives. Let me give you some examples. I've taken some indices of economic freedom from the Heritage Foundation. I've tried to pair
Yeah,
them.
he's gonna be going over a lot of different examples. He's gonna be ripping out the nuance of social isolation, sanctions, vilification, all these different things that have impacted these countries. Which, if America, not just America, the rest of the fucking world interacted with these countries the same way they do with other capitalist countries, we don't. They could have succeeded for all we know. We don't really know for sure why they turned from like whatever they were oh, excuse me, whatever they were before to the Marxist-Leninist shitholes that they became. Like, could it have been because they were originally like kind of like socialists, and then eventually some dude came along and said, "I can fix your country," and then became a dictator and turn it into whatever the fuck it is now? Or there's like a shit ton of different countries to choose from with all various different reasons that he's not really going to be going over the actual nuances of. Let's just put it that way. We could probably fucking
countries to
fast
do
forward
market
through this
advantage.
shit.
Then we look at Taiwan. They got all the good
Yep. Yep.
stuff. Same language, same culture, same everything. Just two different economic systems. Than you would have starvation with. Versus South Korea. Funny. Economy, Venezuela had
Yeah,
every
just a
single
bunch of
advantage.
different examples.
Also, Venezuela person,
This would take like fucking hours to go over, to be honest.
and in Chile, it's
And
roughly
the only thing he's comparing really is their type of government, whether they're authoritarian or not, and how much the salaries are of each the average salary of each country per person, like whether the average salary is like $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever. That's kind of he's just kind of going over that for a long time. Let's see here.
notable difference. Cuba versus Costa Rica. Cuba's been coming
Yep, still.
skyrocket, super fast wealth. You go like that. But during that time, the richest people go whoop, and then the poor people kind of meet them towards the end several decades later. That's how it works in pretty much every economy that's ever been tried. So market-oriented economies, freer economies, one in which the government has marginally less control over the economy, are superior on average also in just about anything else positive you can measure. Cleanliness, crime, social freedom, acceptance of homosexuality and transgenderism,
That's just that's kind of just like a culture thing rather than an economic thing. You can totally have, and I'm not saying again, this is not a defense of central planning, but this is just kind of like a thing in general. Um, this is just a difference of cultures, to be honest. The Marxist-Leninist countries tend to lean toward being like very conservative. I don't really know why specifically, but they usually do, and kind of like I guess you could say have some like religious possible like religious influence like in the fucking Middle East with like Islam having a very big influence in their government control and shit.
treating them as normal.
So this isn't really a thing that has to do with economics at all. These are just different values for different countries.
Human beings.
You can say there's a correlation there, but that's not a causation.
Race relations. Almost everything improves with higher economic freedom index countries.
That's just a complete non sequitur. These are different. These are social values. Economics don't have anything to do with that.
You go to a place like Australia, one of the freest economies in the world, New Zealand, Switzerland,
Okay, we get it.
and everything. Except for oppression, I guess. They're pretty good at that. But even that, they're not doing so impressively. In any case, in mainstream economics, who won the war? Was it free market versus communism? That debate ended a long time ago. As far as science can be definitive, only on the margins, it's pretty close to a closed case. Market-oriented economies, to the extent that they are more market-oriented, and the top end limit we haven't found yet, there is no documented economy that's ever been so free that it's caused negatives. To the extent that economy is more
Uh, I mean, we have documented evidence that we have economies that are so that allow for enough growth of corrupt, bad individuals and bad companies that heavily disrupt the economy and kind of cheat the system. But oh, we're gonna really be getting into that soon. Oh boy.
free, it has more prosperity and more of all the good things that we all as humans agree are good. So that's just the fact of the matter. And that's a huge downside for communism. So if you're trying to get the world together, hey, you guys want to do communism? Like, yeah, what are the upsides? Like, social safety net, everyone's taken care of. Like, sweet. What are the downsides? Like, yeah, none of us really get wealthier that much faster. And some of us will stay poor for a very long time. Like, well, that sucks. Yes, it's a huge concern. Now, why is it a huge concern? Do we really just need a lot of rich people? No, fuck them. Fuck the rich. I'll be the first to say it.
Yay.
However,
I just think he's kind of a sockdem, to be honest. He comes across it, well, maybe like a mix of a welfare capitalist, maybe some sockdem social democratic tendencies. In case you don't know what the fuck that means, social democratic in terms of like welfare and stuff. He seems pretty cool on that. In terms of market economies, he seems to be pretty laissez-faire. So I don't know where I really place him. Kind of like a uh in the middle of a social democrat and a like a laissez-faire liberal, possibly.
wealth is the thing you help people with.
Um, Typically, no. How many wealthy people do you see out here helping the poor and downtrodden and shit? I mean, like, you have Mr. Beast, but it's pretty as much as I like him, it's kinda obvious he's making a lot of profit from it. That plays a large role in why he does it most likely. But typically, no, they don't really do anything at all. Maybe they'll give away, like, little breadcrumbs of their fortune, like, in charity foundations, but the reason they usually do that is for, like, tax write-offs and shit. So there's always, like, some sort of ulterior motive whenever they do help the poor in the very rare instances that they actually do.
Imagine you are walking in this, like, I don't know, Witcher style fucking enchanted forest. You
Ooh, Witcher!
haven't eaten in days, you haven't drank water in days, you're to the brink. And you come upon a household, a little cabin, and you knock on the door. And you're like, please help, and you collapse. If that cabin has the wealth of the typical household of, let's say, Sweden, they got hella food, they got fresh water, they can call the hospital. You're fucking, if you're meant to live, you're gonna live. You knocked on the right fucking door.
It really depends on who you're asking. Um, and whether you're living in America or not, because if you're living in America and you're in this kind of situation, you're gonna go into medical debt, like really bad medical debt. They call the ambulance and you're basically fucked already. Oh my gosh. Social democratic countries like Scandinavia, yeah, you're probably gonna be fine, but uh when it comes to like America at least.
If that house happens to have the average household wealth of North Korea, they're like, hey, you look just like us. And you're like, do you guys have water or food? They're like, we have water from the well. You might get sick drinking it, no big deal, but you won't die. And they're like, what about food?
Yeah,
And
I agree. Fuck North
you're
Korea.
like, yeah, we were thinking maybe you had some food. Nobody fucking has food. It's very hard to come by. So it's nice emotionally to want to help other people, but you have to understand that help is what wealth actually does. You have to be wealthy to help because wealth is allowing you the literal things of help, food.
Well, I mean, you have to be wealthy under this system to be able to help like a random person. But if you're trying to do anything systemic, wealth isn't going to do shit. You have to have an actual position of power to do that. Um, Not to mention, wealthy people typically don't actually want to help anybody. They maybe if they come stumbling in front of them asking for like spare change or whatever, but typically people don't really do anything to help other people. Charity, lots of people don't even donate to charity or anything whenever they get asked, "Hey, would you like to donate an extra dollar to charity?" at like the fucking Panda Express counter or whatever.
Medical care, clothing, a place to live. Wealth is the thing that creates all of them.
What? Whoops.
Literal things of help. What wealth actually does. You have to be wealthy to help because wealth is allowing you the literal things of help: food, medical care, clothing, a place to live.
Medical care? Well, I mean, that's just kind of common sense under a capitalist economy. You need money to be able to get anything in this fucking economy, and you need wealth in something like a social democratic country to be able to tax a lot in order to supply that kind of thing. But the thing is, these things shouldn't even cost money to begin with, at least in my opinion. All necessities should not be tied to money, period. That's that's kind of fucking dumb. You should be entitled a right to live, and you're not really getting that entitled right to live if you live in a country which will literally just kick you on the street and let you starve to death because you don't have enough paper with a little Benjamin Franklin on it or whatever the fuck they use in Scandinavia. I don't know what euros or what something. I don't know for sure.
Wealth is the thing that creates all of them. Redistribution is a meaningless concept if you don't have wealth. Let me give you
What if you abolish wealth? Have you ever thought of that?
another example, unrelated but nonetheless as analogically very similar, just to get you guys thinking. If you want to stand up, let's say you watch a trans person at the store, just get straight physically bullied by this jacked, no offense conservatives, you guys take jokes really well, fucking MAGA hat wearing, like, motherfucker, what gender are you, pussy, pushing them and shit. What are you going to do about it? Well, here's the thing. Imagine there's no police force for a second. The police are 20 minutes out and there's no way you're going to save this person in time with the police. They don't matter. How are you going to help them? How are you
Beat the shit out of the guy? You don't really need money to beat the shit out of somebody to defend somebody else.
going to stand up for them? What you going to do? You going to pull your phone out and start recording it? They're still getting beat to death. You're going to carry on your face between them and get knocked the fuck out, and then the trans person gets knocked the fuck out? No. In order to help someone from physical harm, you need to have physical capacity. You need to have a wealth of power. So if you have a concealed carry, you'd be like, hey, Donald Trump, turn around. Cut it out. I'm going to draw on you. Step the fuck back.
Donald Trump drawing a gun on I don't really think I need to go over how that sounds pretty stupid, but guns are relatively guns are kind of cheap. I got my P365 for only a few $100. Like, get a gun with like 22 long rifle caliber or some shit, you're kind of good to go. It doesn't really cost that much to get armed and self-defense and prepared, at least in Texas. I don't really know how it is in other states in terms of like gun prices and stuff. I'm not sure if that really fluctuates or not, but uh yeah, it doesn't really cost that much to get armed for self-defense. Or you can literally just buy a fucking knife or something like that. A pocket knife doesn't really cost too much. Get a fucking collapsible baton for like $60 online like I did. It's not really that fucking hard to get armed for self-defense. You don't need a gun to save somebody. Just beat the shit out of them with a fucking metal baton. 1 second, let me go actually get it while I go pee. I'll be right back. Okay, so give me 1 second. I have here with me my collapsible baton. Look at this fucking thing. This is like 24 inches. I can fit it in my pocket relatively easy. There we go. $60 for this. It's not too bad. It's not too costly. Get pepper spray for like $13 at the fucking store or whatever. I have a little mini baton over here. Let me go grab it actually, which is really nice. 1 second. Okay, well, I really couldn't find that for some reason. I think I misplaced it, but just grab like a fucking pocket knife. This only costs like, at least this one from Tac Force only costs like $30. It's not that difficult to arm yourself. It doesn't cost that much to arm yourself with like self-defense weapons. So this is kind of a weird point. You don't really need wealth or that much wealth. Just get a fucking kitchen knife and carry that in your bag or some shit. Like, I don't know what this point is.
Everyone knows what that means. That guy's a gun carrier too. He's like, okay, just got on my lane a little bit. You put your hand on the holster. That's some real shit right there. Or you know what?
You just draw a knife. Just spray them with pepper spray. It's not really that hard to disarm somebody if you're poor.
Or some shit like that, and you're like, you fucking yell at that person one more time, I'm gonna dislocate your
Even in
fucking jaw.
fucking California, you can carry pepper spray.
leave you, and then you dislocate their jaw, and then all of a sudden you save the person in order to help those that are most needy. Here's another who helps the needy: Superman.
Oh, also, although you will need wealth in order to afford a lawyer in case you get sued. That's true.
Why is it Superman? Not just some homeless guy from the street. Couldn't he help? Isn't Superman kind of ableist? Ability is the ultimate thing. Wealth is the ultimate thing. It's the thing which you drain down to help other people.
Superman isn't fucking wealthy. He's a reporter for a news outlet.
So if you really want to organize a society in which the poorest, most vulnerable people are helped the most, your absolutely number one concern should be that the rest of society that isn't hopeless and not able to care for itself is producing the maximum amount of wealth possible. Such that if you're like, hey, can I get a little bit of resources to help the poor? Like, fuck yeah, hell yeah. Versus if they're ultra poor and everything.
That doesn't fucking happen that much. Most people do not give a shit about the poor. That's an issue. That's why you have the government to provide them the social safety net which you like. That doesn't correlate. The thing that helps poor people, especially right now, is the social safety net. Sure, you need to get have people get wealthy to be able to tax the shit out of them. But is that a requirement? No. It doesn't really, you don't really need high taxes in order to be able to afford something like social welfare programs and shit. The government can just get that shit by itself relatively easily. They can print out unlimited money for all they care. Like, it does, you don't really need wealth to be able to do all this shit, especially in a socialist society where wealth is abolished and everybody helps each other because there is a strong sense of solidarity. But that's a whole other fucking topic. That's kind of getting off the point.
Everyone's poor. It's like resources from where? North Korea could be communist on paper. Everyone's just equally poor. No one can help anyone because no one can do shit. No one has wealth.
Literally just gang up on somebody and beat the shit out of them. Like, it's also, there's definitely different economic classes under North Korea. There's definitely poor people and wealthy people. Have you seen some of these fucking cities that people are in North Korea? I'm not saying that as a defense. That's just fucking dumb. There are definitely rich people in North Korea, or at least rich by their standards, that can afford visas and shit to get out of here, or afford for like certain things. Have you seen? One second. Let me see. Oh, there's a whole fucking thing about it. Chad, one second.
Chakama is a North Korean.
Cholma. Look at these fucking people. These are wealthy people in North Korea. I'm not saying that as a defense of them. That's just an objective fact. They do have wealthy people. The question is whether they actually use that wealth for anything or how that wealth is used whenever they get taxed. But that's, yeah, they have wealthy people. They got wealth of some sort.
But if you have a country like Sweden, there's so many wealthy people that they easily take care of their poor. You fucking watch a documentary about Swedish jail. It's ridiculous. It's better than my.
Dude, the government taxes them the shit. That's like one of the big criticisms that Scandinavia faces. A lot of conservatives levy the criticism that they get taxed to oblivion over there. A lot of people over there are kind of like a little bit poor on average in Sweden compared to us, aren't they? Because they're being taxed to taxed to hell and back. It's not. He's kind of it seems like, I could be misinterpreting this. He seems to kind of be painting it in a way where Sweden has a lot of like wealthy people, and therefore the wealthy people help out the poor, which I haven't seen that to be the case. That's the government taking that wealth and redistributing it. And even then, again, you don't need wealth to be able to do any of this shit. Just a strong sense of solidarity within communities with the resources to be able to do stuff. But that, again, that's a whole other discussion, and I'm not even sure he knows about the concept of solidarity in terms of like socialist views on it or whatever.
Fucking house I live in. Like, that's what you can do with wealth. Wealth is the ultimate helper.
You don't need wealth to be able to do any of that.
Intentions to help are secondary, because with intentions to help, you can't help. With a lot of wealth, you can help, and then the intentions that
the government can help, not you. You will most likely not want to, at least if you're a rich person. You want to be fucking saving all your money and shit for fucking vacations or whatever, like Bill Gates and shit.
Easy part. So this is why low economic freedom countries have worse outcomes on almost all these variables of how well they help the poor, how well they tend to the environment, because all those things cost money. They don't have
Well, you can absolutely do something like trade resources with other countries, but again, he's ripping all the nuance out of that because these countries have massive fucking sanctions placed on them, especially something like Cuba, for example. Massive embargoes and sanctions placed on them by America. They have been isolated by a lot of the world. So it's really hard for them to get any wealth when they can't fucking sell anything to make more wealth. They're stuck with a certain amount of money, basically, and it's kind of just having to circulate and wither away over time. Because there's no way for them to make any more wealth. It's hard to make wealth when there's nothing to sell or buy to be able to do anything, you know?
a lot of money because they're not busy creating wealth. They're busy worrying about who gets the wealth, which is a very, very
Just refer back to my last point for
important
that.
concern, very secondary to who makes the wealth. It's like being on a basketball team and wondering about who's getting the ball more often, who's getting a chance to score. If you're dominant and you're winning all the time, that's a fine discussion to have. If you're losing, shut the fuck up. It doesn't matter who gets the fucking ball. You guys all suck. Who gives a shit? I give you the ball, you fucking get swatted out. I give you the ball, you get hurt. Somebody's got to produce on here, and then we can worry about is the ball being redistributed. Absolutely. On the other hand, long-time free countries that are, because they're long-time free, they're insanely wealthy, they're the best at handling everything that socialists ideally want to handle on paper. So
Not America.
for example, the Nordic countries, the rich Asian countries like Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, Switzerland, these countries are the ones that have all of the features of progressive, super advanced socialism.
You gotta love, by the way, how he's focusing on these countries who are capitalists and shit. And the main reason that they're able to do all these things well is because of the social safety net, which America doesn't have. Shit, I fucking lost my train of thought.
As
Maybe it'll come back to me in a bit.
envisioned by the founders. There's, if you're homeless, if you're sick, if you can't eat, if you can take care of yourself, they got you handled 50 different ways with a ton of care, crap load of money is thrown your way. That's awesome. But where do these guys get their wealth? These are the economies of the world.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was bringing up how these are like some of the wealthiest countries in the world, but he's conveniently avoiding America, which is a very capitalist country. Like, so much of the country is fucking just being ruled by private owners and shit. That's pretty fucking capitalist. It's not about how much economic freedom you have in terms of the market and stuff. It's about how much of it is like fucking privatized and being controlled by those privatized people. At least in my opinion, it is.
Which have the most unregulated machines of wealth generation in capitalism. That's how they get their money, and then they help. So the ultimate combination of socialism and capitalism isn't so socialism or communism is the thing and capitalism gets kicked out, nor is it only capitalism, there's no care for the poor, whatever. It's probably like huge emphasis on capitalism, generate as much wealth as possible, and then a small but concerted effort on making sure some of that wealth is intelligently siphoned off to do the things that socialism sets out to do. They're the best features of that system, to help those who cannot help themselves or help those who are in emergencies.
So just social democracy.
Next, downside of communism.
Oh boy, I think this is the one that made me decide whether I should do anything at all about this video. I'm gonna slow it down just so you can absorb what you're about to hear. Here we go.
Creates massive incentives. Downside of communism. It creates massive incentives to cheat the system to get ahead. This isn't the case in most market economies nearly that much.
What? What do you mean? The whole point of communism, even if we're just talking about Marxism, Leninism specifically, which is what he's focusing on, how the fuck do you cheat the system under Marxism and Leninism? Because everybody is put down. You can't cheat your way when there's already people at the top doing everything. You can argue maybe the people at the top, like fucking Stalin or Mao or whoever, cheated their way, but not really. That's kind of the way it was. That's kind of the way the system works. You get somebody come along who's charismatic enough to be able to get all that power, and then they just fucking stay there. That's not cheating the system. That's literally how it fucking works under that ideology. And there's no way for the worker to be able to cheat the system because the people in power are there to fucking stay. It's not like you can be democratically elected to be able to get into a position of power under Marxism Leninism. There's no effective way to fucking cheat under there. Meanwhile, under market economies, the whole point of markets is competition. And what do you do in a competition to get ahead if you're a bad, morally bankrupt individual? You cheat. You fucking cheat. And there are different ways of doing that. Artificial scarcity, land obsolescence, market manipulation, all these fucking things are very prevalent under market economies, or especially like with America. It probably fucking happens a lot in European countries, given how much influence we have over there with our fucking big corpo businesses spreading all around the world at this point. Cheating under market economies is a very big problem. Let's just see what he has to say.
If you ask yourself, how do you make the most money in a market economy? There's only one answer to that question that's correct. It's start a business and make sure it's successful. Even if your business is a personal brand, that's your business. And the way that businesses become successful over the long term is providing more value to people than the people have in their dollars.
You literally work in the fucking fitness industry, dude. You do not make... That's like one way of doing it. That's the honest way of doing it, but you literally work in the fitness industry. People are making bank off of scams. They're making bank off of lies. People are selling shit like weight loss supplements and testosterone. Shit which does not work, which provides no value to people. And they're making bank. Look at Athlean X. Look at fucking V-Shred. Look at Greg Duquette with his stupid supplement line. These people are making bank in a market economy, yet they're cheating. They're literally cheating. They're not fucking doing anything honestly. They're lying to their consumers about their products and shit. That's not fair. That's cheating. That's lying. That's that's being morally bankrupt.
So if the Coca-Cola...
You work in one of the most corrupted and scammy industries in the world. The fitness industry is ripe with misinformation and lies for the sake of making money. How do you think this with your with what you work in?
Coca-Cola company makes a shitty soft drink, I don't buy it. They don't get any money. But if they make a super awesome, tasty, refreshing beverage, easily I'll pay a couple dollars and I'll get a Coke.
But the thing is, if they lie about their fucking Coca-Cola, if they make it taste good and they lie about benefits from it, like let's say Coca-Cola has a lot of vitamin D in it because they put some sort of fucking mushroom powder in it, kind of like with the Pokemon cookie discourse a little bit ago. They say that they have a bunch of vitamin D in it. That would be a fucking lie. They lied to their consumers in order to make more money. That is cheating. Lying is cheating in a market economy because you're not providing more value to the consumer if you're lying about the effects or the features of your product or whatever. That's objectively not providing value. And in cases with like weight loss supplements and shit, that's not providing any fucking value because they flat out don't work.
I win. So in free market economies, ambition to become ultra wealthy and ultra powerful is concordant with, largely, the production of value for everyone else.
Just refer back to my previous points because this is complete fucking... He's looking at this very idealized. This is very idealized view of market economies because in theory, all that he's saying is correct. And I support these aspects of market economies. The issue is the fact that this isn't how it translates to reality. The issue is we see what happens in a market economy when you allow competition and don't really have that much government regulation, especially something like fucking Norway or whatever. It leads to lies, it leads to scams, it leads to frauds, and these people make bank and they're never held accountable for it unless they're being canceled online, and even then, that doesn't really take away all of their fucking wealth that they unfairly and cheated out of us, does it?
Like, why the fuck is Bill Gates so rich? Because him and his team invented Microsoft Excel, and the rest of the world made, I don't know, trillions of dollars off that. Bill Gates got some chump change billions. But
he invented one thing and he's been profiting off of it ever since. That's not really fucking fair. You make one thing that provides social value and then you just get to live the rest of your life in luxury and shit. That's kind of fucking scummy to me. especially when you don't really do much for your employees and stuff. They might be paid fairly and everything, like, or perceived as fair, I should say, but they're probably not being paid what they actually generate in terms of value, which is kind of like impossible to do under capitalism. Shit, my throat's getting fucking sore. It's not really possible to pay someone the amount of money they actually generate, because that would mean no profit for the company if all the money it was generating was going back into the hands of their employees fairly, which fucking sucks. But a lot of people's salaries are kind of like undervalued, I would say. Especially with the past few decades, with productivity rising a lot, yet wages have completely stagnated for decades as well. Yeah, my fucking throat hurts. Shit, man. Too much talking.
Welcome. That's great. I want people with Bill Gates' ambition and intelligence to do what they do in capitalism. Elon Musk. Elon Musk is like a world leader type of guy. What does he do? He makes like electric cars and robots and shit like that. That's amazing.
There's a really good video by a YouTuber named Moon. Let me bring it up real quick just so you can fucking Google it if you're watching this. This fucking video right here. These two videos right here. Maybe not this one because it's kind of irrelevant. But those two videos up here. Really fucking good videos as to how the hell Elon Musk got rich and why he is a fucking he is the embodiment of cheating in a market economy. He is the embodiment of a fucking hype beast. He is a scammer. He is a liar. He does not deserve any of his fucking wealth, yet he got it anyways because he's done nothing but lie and fail his way to the fucking top. He's a nepo baby. Oh my gosh. He is like the worst fucking example you can cite of a person fairly making it in a market economy, because everything he's done, it's so fucking scummy. It is absolutely incomprehensible how bad he is and how stupid he is. You literally just need to look at how the fuck he's managing Twitter to see how much of a fucking retard he is. He's like, you get the point.
Amazing. And he sells it to people for a very small amount of money relative to how amazing that technology is.
What? Fucking, his cars are like super fucking expensive, especially for the kind of technology it is. You can find cheaper cars from like other manufacturers compared to his. Literally, the only reason why his shit is so expensive, I think, has to do with the branding. Kind of like, you know, with the Supreme clothing line, how that shit's super over fucking priced just because of the name attached to it. Tesla is super fucking overpriced because it's Tesla. Everybody wants a fucking Tesla because Teslas are cool. Which means that the value, which means that the price goes up because they see, hey, everybody wants this fucking car because the name is good. So let's mark up that price and make it more profitable and drive up that demand.
What about communism? How do you get ahead in communism? Well, you're not allowed to make any more money than a certain point. There's a huge cap on income. And
Gotta remember, he's going over centrally planned Marxism-Leninism. Did the USSR even have money? I don't even know that. Not this. Shit. Let's just go with the USSR. Okay, so they did have money.
and your ambition and hard work isn't really so much rewarded, even philosophically in communism. They're kind of looked at as not such a great thing. And so how do you get ahead? There's this very, very strict system of rules. And in order to generate the most wealth for yourself and the most influence, you actually, that all happens outside the system. So if you can rig the system to your advantage, that's how you benefit. If you
That's kind of just how it fucking works, dude. Like, it's really hard to get any positions of power under this form of communism. Let's just call it this form of communism, Marxism-Leninism, or I'll just call it Marxism-Leninism because that's literally what it is. The only way you can get power under the system is if you have ties to those who are currently in power, as far as I'm concerned. You can't cheat the system under Marxism Leninism to be able to get into power, because that's literally how it fucking works. That's how you get the power to begin with. That's how Joseph Stalin got his power to begin with. That's literally just how it works. He's describing how it works. You know what?
You
Yeah.
rig the system to your advantage in the market, the price system figures you out, and all of a sudden you don't have shit. Like,
Whoa! System doesn't figure you out. That's bullshit. Have you ever heard of the concept of artificial scarcity?
if you rig the system to your advantage in the market, the price system figures you out, and all of a sudden you don't have shit. Like,
That's completely fucking bullshit. There's so many cases. Artificial scarcity is a real fucking problem in capitalist market economies. If you don't know what it is, it's basically when you sell something as when you market something as it's a limited time offer. There's not that much of this product coming out. That's bullshit. They can produce all they want of that. The thing is that they are lying about it, right? Which means they can mark up the price and sell it for a big amount of profit. Like, say it costs like $20 to make a limited time shirt with a fucking pickle Rick on it or whatever. And then they can sell that for like $60 because, there's not that many. Get it while supplies last. That's a fucking lie. That is cheating the system. And the thing is, the price system in market economies don't ever figure it out, because that's literally like, how do I put it? It's a lie you can get away with, because it's just a common practice. Lying to the consumer about how much supplies last is a common practice under market economies, which is cheating them, because that's a lie. It adds no actual value to say that this is limited time when it literally isn't. Or it can be, it only is because you're making it that way.
like if you're selling computer components that don't work, and you're like, yeah, we rigged the system. See, you'll sell a few of them, and then the company will be like, these don't work. And then you're going to be like, well, you guys want more? And they're going to be like, no. And then you don't have any money.
That's a stupid fuck. We have issues like that right now with like the fucking what is it? Some like graphics cards and stuff. I think it was it like the GTX 4070 or some shit, which it's not that it didn't work, it's that it didn't perform any better than previous GPUs or some shit like that. I'm not big on computers, so I can't really say for sure. But there was one graphics card in particular which performed no better than graphics cards from like 5 years ago. I think it was from like the Nvidia series. And that shit still made bank. People called it out, but it still fucking sold like hotcakes because it's the biggest, newest thing. That kind of shit happens all the fucking time under capitalism and market economies, because of the issue of like stagnation in the quality of products and innovation. But that's the point that I'll actually that he's gonna bring up later.
In communism, it's all committees and approval and political finagling. If you can futz the system a little bit, if you can take some money in off the top end to yourself, then
how do you fucking do that though, unless you're in a position of power? For like 99% of the population, 99.9% of the population under communism, under Marxism Leninism, that's not possible. It's not possible to cheat the system when the system is designed to only benefit like a certain amount of people, and it's basically impossible for you to get into a position of power that way.
really the system incentivizes, that's kind of the only way to do an outlay for your motivation and for your success.
Also, that's an issue with fucking any system in general. Cheating your way to power. Have you fucking looked at the American government? Have you looked at fucking UK's government? Like, this is an issue everywhere. This isn't something exclusive to communism.
Successful venture. So the people that do the best in communism, generally ones that can manipulate the system the best. That's not what you want out of a system. The people that do generally the best in capitalism are ones that just like generate value for other people, and that's well within the confines of the system.
Again, you literally work in the fitness industry, which is ripe with people who generate no value. They just lie and bullshit their way to making money. V-Shred, anybody selling testosterone, all these fucking people do nothing and generate no value. Yet they make a shit ton of money anyways. This is an idealistic view of market economies and only looking at it from the theoretical perspective of, oh, everybody's going to play fair. Everybody's going to be nice. Everybody's going to play fair and wanting to get into power. No, it's competitive. The entire point of a competition, especially in a system like this where you want more money and more power, it's going to strongly incentivize cheating and lying and scamming people. How do you think fucking gold companies have made so much money? Those things are bullshit. Goldman Sachs gold shit is bullshit. It's a scam. Yet they make a shit ton of money anyways because people are retards and desperate. Because the economy sucks and people want money to survive.
This situation causes, over time, massive cultures of corruption. One of the biggest elements to a corruption culture is people think that the corruption is just business as usual, and you'd have to be a dummy not to do it. Like,
what do we live under right now, dude? Mike, I love you. You're cool. I like your fitness content, but what the fuck do you think we live under right now?
people think that the corruption is just business as usual, and you'd have to.
Donald Trump with his corrupt business dealings in the fucking when he was fucking president. And then people think the same thing with Joe Biden right now with his fucking son involvement, blah 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 blah. Anytime a business person lies and they're called out on it, people just kind of ignore it and just think, oh, that's just what businessmen do. Oh, it's just what businessmen do whenever they take all their fucking profits from a company and then lay off half their fucking workforce. Oh, that's just what business people do. That is corrupt. Like, especially in the video game industry where that's an issue. Fucking like Blizzard will give their CEO a bazillion-dollar bonus and then lay off 50% of their workforce. Oh, that's just what businesses do. It sucks, but that's just what they do. And nobody fucking does anything about it. That's corruption. People will call it out, but then do nothing about it the next day.
To be a dummy not to do it. Like, in many of these countries, if you get pulled over by a police officer, you just pay them off and off you go. And is that considered unethical? Nobody cares, because that's just how it
That's kind of how it is here, unless you get caught with like fucking meth or something.
works. If you're well tuned in and seeded into a corruption culture, even if you transition to a mostly free market economy, that baggage of that culture is so destructive, so deleterious, so much prevents people from cooperating together. It can lag your country behind for a long time. Elements of East German corruption culture have been noted 20 years later after the unification of the Germanies as being keeping down incomes and life successes of East Germans. It's a big deal. Russia, enormous culture of corruption. I'm from Russia. My parents spent half their lives in Russia. I spent the first 7 years of my life. In Russia, there were two types of people. People that took advantage of the system, fucking chumps, period. There was nobody hardworking, making success for themselves within the rules, because the rules did not allow success. Because communism says success is way overrated, and what you do is just do your job, you get paid your little meager amount, and then you go live your proletariat,
I agree. Fuck Russia.
bourgeois, whatever the fuck life. So the people that wanted the most success, they took matters in their own hands. That incentivized corruption like crazy. China, you Google some stories of corruption from China. A lot of Chinese folks, companies, etc., are impossible to work with because they lie at every single step. And it's not so much like a bad thing as much as an expected thing. You spend your whole life, generations of it, lying to the government and to everyone around you to get your little.
That's literally what we do right now in America. Companies lie all the fucking time, and then people just consider it as business as usual because that's what business people do. They constantly fucking lie.
Away, and all of a sudden,
That's literally what's happening right now in our country. I'm not even, is he Canadian or something or what? But in the country that I live in, at least, the world's most wealthiest country, that shit is fucking prevalent as hell.
people are like, oh, it's the market. You're supposed to be honest. Really? That never worked for us before. So once the culture is there, it's really tough. Ukraine war is going on right now. People complain of a huge culture of corruption in Ukraine. Yeah, where the fuck you guys think they got that? Fucking 80 years of communism. That'll do that to a country. Belarus, same idea. Same 80 years of communism. Same system. Venezuela, huge corruption problems, also communist, Cuba, and so on and so on and so on. So one of the big problems with communism is that it creates incentives to play unfairly. Now, here's the thing. All humans should do better. In any given system, all humans have the ability to resist the incentives that pull them. But you also have to think about humans are just human. They're malleable, soft things. They err. They make mistakes.
Well,
They
maybe we should eliminate that incentive. Anarchy. Oh, yeah.
generally go with the flow. They go with the easiest gradient, and they're not always heroic in their actions. So, given a similar amount of human worth, if you put humans into an environment in which success is a matter of cheating the system, you're going to get a lot of people that cheat the system and a culture that develops around that's being a good idea. Whereas if you put the same identical humans into a culture where it's like, don't cheat the system, just do your best and you'll get paid as much good work as you do, then all of a sudden more people have that culture and then they just do better. So it's not an either or, it's not a 1-0 communism versus capitalism, but freer economies generally support cultures of mutual cooperation and prosperity more than communist countries, which generally.
What the fuck are you talking about? That's bullshit. That is complete nonsense. Look at all the biggest fucking corporations in the world that have successfully succeeded in the market economies. They're corrupt. They're exploiting third world child labor and shit. They're exploiting so many people. So much like exploitation in the workplace. People's wages are fucking artificially decreased to the bare minimum possible that they can get away with because they want more money. Like, what are you talking about, man? The freer the market, the easier it becomes to exploit people and lie.
Really support more cultures of like, ratting out your neighbors and trying to finagle your own thing where you get a little money off the top of a couple of the industries you work in, and corruption's the way to go. Huge, huge problem. Next problem. Communism can create moral hazards on the side of transfer recipients. If working harder isn't rewarded, like as soon as you get to be a janitor, this is your cap. My dad was a physicist. I remember he made the same money as a janitor in Russia. Figure that one out. Maybe just low demand for physicists. I don't know. They didn't do supply and demand. Don't worry. They just made up those prices. If my dad was 10 times the physicist he wouldn't make any extra money. There was no corporations to go to make semiconductors for anything like that. Corporations didn't exist. If working harder has a huge cap and anything above that isn't rewarded, and innovation is not rewarded, like how do we reward innovation? Well, if you innovate, you get a real big disproportionate amount of money. That fuels innovation like crazy. Also, a lot of people innovate in their personal time.
No, it doesn't. That is not how that fucking works. Literally, look at where we are right now. Stagnate. Okay, let me put it this way. He's right to a degree if there's innovation to be made. If he's right to a degree if there is profit to be made from innovation. But as soon as you get a formula or a product that makes a good amount of income that you're happy with, there's no need to innovate anymore. If you'll just start taking if it ain't broke, don't fix it route, and then maybe make incremental upgrades. This is very, very prevalent in something like the smartphone industry, for example. When was the last fucking time you saw Apple innovate on anything beyond making the battery life longer and the camera a little bit better? When was the last time you saw fucking Android innovate on anything besides turning a smartphone into a fucking flip phone? We brought flip phones back, and we combined a smartphone with the flip phone from the 2000s. What else have we seen? Nothing. Innovation, profit motive does not feel innovation if there is enough money to be made off of the current iteration of whatever product it is. Another issue with innovation under the market system is the fact that oh wait, he's not in the market system. But in terms of what communism, I'll get on my next market criticism in a bit. But in terms of like something like communism, or even this fucking version of communism, there's two different things which could feel innovation. One, social recognition. Social recognition is a great motivator. This has been studied extensively. It's a great fucking motivator for innovation. It's a great motivator for morale, improving the morale of the workplace, stuff like that. It is a great fucking motivator for innovation. And number two, what else could be used for innovation under Marxism, Leninism? I'm just fucking spitballing here because I really fucking hate centrally planned economies. But the fact that the central planners can literally say, hey, go innovate. Allocate resources to innovation. This isn't really that fucking difficult. The issue with like something like the USSR was they were ruled by retards. And they were too focusing on other shit.
Spare time, but there's levels to innovation. Let me give you an example. You can have a eureka idea in a fucking communist country. Plenty of people have. But one idea by itself, even one invention by itself, is good. It's a good start, but it's not the whole thing. True advancement in standards of living are involved when you have an innovation that you've created, and the incentive structure for you is so massive to make that innovation better and more effective and actually deal with consumers' concerns. The more you attend to taking that innovation and plugging it into and expanding it into the rest of society, such that it's a functioning machine for other people, like the car or the computer or the cell phone or the internet or the iPhone, whatever you have it, whatever innovation we're talking about.
And when was the last time you've seen any of those things be innovated, like meaningfully innovated? You haven't, because there's no need to innovate anymore. We will, under market economies, we will hit a point where there will be no innovation left for like almost anything, because the thing that they last innovated on makes enough fucking money for them. It like, this isn't that hard to comprehend. The only reason people innovate is to make money, but if they already make enough money, there's no reason to risk putting in more money to innovate if what you already have is already generating enough profit to satisfy you.
The more you make that innovation useful, the more money you get. I mean, Bill Gates innovated like crazy, Steve Jobs, etc. They get like fucking billions of dollars, right? Like that's
It was a team of people. They weren't the only ones that fucking contributed. For one, Bill Gates had like a buddy or something like that. They both created Microsoft. And then his buddy got left in the dust or something, and he absolutely hates Bill Gates' ass now. But these typically aren't created by just one person. It's created by a group of people. Yet the leader of that group of people is the one that gets all the credit, which is bullshit. It's bullshit. Inventions aren't always created by just one fucking person. Usually, there's more than one person creating them, yet only one person gets all the fucking profit and money in recognition anyways, because fuck you if you're not the leader of the group or whatever.
what we want. Not because rich people need any more billions. Fuck them. Who gives a shit? It's the fact that they're so psychotically motivated by not 10 times more money, not 100 times more money, like almost an infinite times more money. They will push these megalith projects and take their whole lives to get that innovation actually instantiated in the market. That's the kind of innovation that fucking counts. I don't want to go to a museum.
There's also bad innovation when it comes to that. They want all the money in the world. He's right about that. The issue that comes with that is not only the lack of innovation once you find something that works, there also comes the issue of bad innovation. Innovation which comes at the detriment of the consumer. Let's take a really good example. Microtransactions in video games. Fucking massive cash cow. You know how much fucking money that what is it? Rockstar has made off of GTA Online ever since they introduced microtransactions? Literal billions. They've made like so much fucking money off of GTA Online shark cards and shit. The issue with this, when you have an economy driven by money and wanting to make more money, is that they'll find ways to make money. And that includes bad ways. Bad ways to scam us out of money. Innovation for money, shit, take a shot every time I said money, includes ways that come to our detriment. How do you think there's new evolutions of fucking scams? Phone scams, email scams, pornbot scams on Twitter. Like, all these are forms of innovation that are done negatively to harm us in order to get more money. That's the bad part about innovation being tied to money, is that it's done for money. It's done for profit. And they'll make profit at any means possible, even if it means fucking us over.
And see an example of the Soviet Union developed a cell phone. I want to go to the Soviet Union and see where the fuck their GSM network is. Do you guys have a cell network? It operates with reasonable prices and good service. That was never the case when I was there. It was never the case after. They imported all their cell phone tech from the West. The communists never actually built a functioning cell phone ultrastructure because nobody was incentivized not to work hard, not to work harder, to give their life to.
They weren't. It was because they focused all their fucking priorities on something else. Didn't they focus on like on the Cold War and stuff and developing like different bombs and shit? Didn't they like beat us on the space race? Let me shit. They put a lot of their fucking time into launching somebody into space, kind of like what we did. The issue is that they focus too much resources into that, while America could kind of innovate all over the place because of the market economy, which is an inefficiency in the centrally planned economy. Don't get me wrong, but they could have easily done that if they just reprioritize their priorities.
Something like that. True innovators, making not just good ideas, but layering on top of those ideas and making those ideas work with the rest of the economy, spend lifetimes doing that. I'm a nobody. I make 2 apps, but I've given so
Congrats.
much of myself to making the shit I do for RP. For sure took years off my life. Crazy amount of stress. It's all on me all the time. That incentivized me
Bullshit.
like crazy, in part because, well, the money's kind of fucking absurd. If the money wasn't kind of fucking absurd, to be honest with you guys, I would just coach. I would just do an online coach. I'm already famous. I get a lot of money doing that. I would never bother making apps. What happened with apps? Now we have the diet app and we have the hypertrophy app. People who can spend roughly $2 a day and all of their diet and all the training is completely handled by a machine that learned from a sports scientist. Oh my fucking God. It's pat myself on the back, but in the grand sense of what we do in the 50s, 60s, 70s, et cetera, this is a fucking miracle. It's nonsense. It's madness. Where do you get that kind of innovation? Precisely in the places that reward an obscene amount of effort, way overkill, because the upside is basically infinite. If you cap the upside, you'll still have innovation, for sure. Way less of it, and on way less grandiose scales, which is exactly what you see in communist countries in practice. Now, some people might go to the extreme and just might produce nothing at all or sandbag like crazy, and that hurts everyone else. Like if you get paid to go to work and you get paid the same and you can't get fired, whether or not you do a good job or just you do a basic decent job and no one's touching you, you can't make any more money. If you do really well, you can't make any less. If you do like much more poorly, you just get the same amount of money. What the fuck is your incentive to work super hard and be a
What do you think quiet quitting is? In capitalist countries, especially like America, where culture is shit right now. Because you're not gonna get fired if you're doing the bare minimum of your job and shit. Lots of people aren't even working hard right now anymore because they realize they can just get away with the bare minimum. Incentivization to work hard and innovate is an all-time low right now for most people because they're just looking to get by. Most people don't think they're gonna be the next big hit Bill Gates or whatever. So they're just going there to work, doing the bare minimum and leaving. There's no incentive to work right now. Quiet quitting is on a rise for a reason.
great person and really go above and beyond. There's no incentive like that. What's your incentive even to do a decent job? Well, if you don't
There
get
is no incentive right now, except if you want more hours to go generate more money for some kook at the top of the fucking business chain. That's your fucking incentive. Generating more money for some retard who's profiting off of all your fucking hard work. That's your incentive, unfortunately. For most of us, not you. You created your app and shit, which is fine and dandy. But for most of us, we don't really have a real incentive to work, honestly.
fired for non-decent work, there is no incentive anymore. Not all people, most people aren't this fucked up, but a lot of people are like, fuck it, I'm just going to do the bare minimum or hardly nothing at all, get paid, and invest more in my hobbies or more in leisure, since this is not an outlay that has an ability to multiply.
That's like what a lot of fucking Gen Z is right now. We've completely given up on working hard because we realize there is no fucking point in doing it.
For me. Why the fuck would I do
The
it?
people who have succeeded have already succeeded, and there's not really much room for us, unfortunately.
The evidence from large-scale application of communism, nationwide especially, and across nations and across history, hugely and definitively says this is a big deal. There is some limited UBI, universal basic income evidence, that says the alteration of incentive structures is not a big deal, but several thousand people here and there doesn't combine to several billion people all over Earth for all of economic history. So the evidence is very much still hugely in favor of the idea that moral hazards in communism and in social safety nets really are a real thing that require huge concern. Also, the UBI is very different from communism in a very, very specific way. If you don't do anything at all, you still get paid your universal basic income. Fuck.
That's literally how it fucking is for universal basic income. Everybody gets a basic income whether they do shit or not.
Sweet. But
That's how it's supposed to work.
if you take another job and you do more on top of that, you get more money. So the upside is still there, which is a huge deal. In communism, there's generally no upside. If you do really, really good work, the probability that you'll be promoted is nominal. Maybe you'll get promoted, but that just gives you more responsibility. Do you make more money? No, everyone's supposed to make the same amount. So if I make the same amount, just doing my own bullshit job, 8 hours a day, and I go home, chill with my family, or if I make the same amount, but spend 14 hours of work architecting these huge systems to make a lot of people cooperate in really beneficial ways, what's my payout? Passion, I guess. But remember, people who do things just for passion, they go a long way. People who do things for passion plus profit, they go all the fucking way. So huge thing that you're missing out on in that case. Lastly, this is one of the biggest deals.
Okay, cool. We're
Communism
getting to the close to the end.
centralizes power, which means it gives a lot of power to very few people. And communism places a very small emphasis on individual liberties and the restraint of government. There's a lot of stuff governments are
I
free.
When it comes to Marxism Leninism, completely correct. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to other forms of communism, completely fucking wrong. Which I get that he's focusing on the forms of communism that have been implemented. But again, like I said at the beginning, it's called communism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. He should at least touch on the other forms of communism, other schools of thought that haven't been tried yet, like libertarian communism and shit. That would be nice if he went over that, but he's very focused on the in practice stuff.
Countries just
And I'm not sure if it's because he's just not well versed in theory or not, which I completely understand. But at the same time, if you're going to be delving into a topic as complex as this, you should at least know the bare bones basics of other forms of communism, or at least the complete polar opposite of Marxism-Leninism.
just can't do to you without a crap load of due process and annoyance. Right? The United States government is not just allowed to pluck you off the street for no reason at all.
Yes,
Communist
they
governments
can. Yes, they can. Have you? They literally can. We did that during the fucking Floyd protest. Do you remember all the times that these unmarked vans just picked up random protesters for no fucking reason? All the times we've just declared we've arrested people for protesting past curfew that the government can enforce at literally any fucking time they want. They can pluck you off the street for any reason they want, and they typically get away with it. You just see all the times that cops have planted shit in people's cars or their houses, like cocaine and shit, in order to arrest them for no fucking reason other than they're black or whatever. And they typically get away with it. Corrupt cops are very rarely actually held to given consequences, or meaningful consequences at least. They can do that right now. It's unfortunate, but it's true. It's just that you're okay. People are generally okay with it because it's like, oh, that's norm. A lot of cops are corrupt, blah, 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 blah. And I get he probably doesn't know that. He seems like predominantly focused on fitness, but at the same time, this is stuff that we should acknowledge, and that is pretty similar to what he's describing here.
they own you. They can pluck you off the street anytime.
Yeah, same here.
When you give a lot of people that much unchecked power, very quickly the people that are
You can even do that in fucking the European countries, I think. They can just get away with that shit too, as far as I know.
attracted to this sort of thing are psychopaths, sociopaths, megalomaniacs. Now they're in charge. They don't give up on power. In almost every communist
Donald Trump.
country ever tried, even if the attempt was democratic at first, democracy lasts for a few elections, sometimes not even, and then one person gets put in charge, and they don't leave. We're talking about Stalin, we're talking about Mao, we're talking about Pol Pot, we're talking about all that shit. Communism is almost designed in its incentive structure to grow dictatorships and to grow oppressive totalitarian regime.
Well, that's the dictatorship, the proletariat. And I agree in terms of this specific ideology, but again, like I keep saying, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
That's why in almost every instance of real, true attempt at communism, China,
Communism.
Russia, Cuba, Venezuela, East Germany, North Korea, Vietnam, the list goes on, what you get is a despotic totalitarian government, essentially by
What
design.
about Rojava?
Whereas if your design is for limited government, more democratically determined policies, but the policies are very constrained, a high degree of individual liberty for all people, those places tend to do much better. Sweden, Norway, the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand,
They're not that
Denmark.
much better though, is the thing. They're full of fucking political corruption. Especially America in particular is horrible on that shit. Canada is pretty fucking bad on that shit too. Can't really speak on Scandinavia, but from what I've heard at least, they have their own problems.
Almost every country of Europe, they do just much better because the probability of everything slipping into totalitarian hell is really low. Now, something to say here.
They, fucking a lot of Europe literally lives under a monarchy, doesn't it? Like, holy shit.
The ability to code for totalitarianism and for oppression and despotism isn't unique to communism. It's actually unique to every social structure ever tried until we tried a limited constitutional republic. It's the only thing that's worked so far reasonably well. Feudalism, monarchies and shit, they were all despotic. Communism is just a continuation of that trend. So communism codes for, in its design, by centralizing power, by having very few limits to power, enough to really get those goddamn billionaires and get their money. You give a government that much power to expropriate wealth from everyone. Now they got all the wealth. Now they're in charge. And they don't want to go anywhere. They like wealth.
They're still in charge. Either way, under most systems.
Remember, everybody likes wealth, writ large, period. And when communist leadership gets enough wealth and power, like Xi Jinping now has in China, they don't typically like to give it up. They don't. And then someone else has a freedom political movement, so they just go and shoot all of them or imprison the rest because I'm not trying to deal with that bullshit. I fucking.
What do you think we've done to several different, not even several, like dozens upon dozens of different countries? We have done that. You know how many times we've intervened in Latin America? It's above 50 times to squash out every socialist fucking revolution that's happened there, or socialist government. We have a track record of doing exactly that to stop socialism from being successful, so people can look at it and say, oh wow, that actually worked. Maybe capitalism is kind of failing after all, and then starting to question the status quo. A lot of socialist countries that are not really well known, like fucking Nigeria and shit, have been squashed by America. Chile and shit, with the fucking what was it, Salvador Allende or some shit like that back in the 70s. Not very well versed on the history regarding certain countries, but we've done that. We've done that all over the fucking world because we don't want socialism to fucking work. Because that would make people question the status quo in our country. Same for these other fucking countries.
One. It was a race to the top. I found myself there. I'm shutting down the whole fucking thing. That's how communism works. So the ultimate point to make about how big of a deal this is that the vast majority of these communist countries in history had bans on emigration. I want you guys to really think about this.
Yes, they were very isolationist.
And realize how big
and that was like a big thing I think Trotsky had an issue with when it came to Stalin, was that Stalin was way too nationalistic and isolationist.
If you live in the United States, if you live in Sweden, if you live in Australia,
okay, he's just going to go on a little tangent about fucking immigration.
If you live in Taiwan, if you live in South Korea, I'm going to Japan because things got really tough here. Nobody's coming to look for you. If the entire idea is insane. In a huge fraction of communist countries during history, I think pretty close to all of them, you're not allowed to leave. You're fleeing. You're a refugee.
Yes, we get it. That is true.
When we left the Soviet Union from America because we were Jews and they were starting to kill us off like they do every now and again, ocean to Florida to get the fuck away from Cuba, but why couldn't they just get on a plane and fly over? Because it was illegal for them to leave. I'll put this very mildly and then I'll move on with the rest of my talk, which is almost coming to an end. If your country forces people to stay, it sucks.
That is true.
If your country doesn't force you to stay and says you can come back anytime, it's probably a lot better because they know you're.
That's a very low fucking bar, to be fair. Whoopsies.
America, where I live, they know I'm coming back. Also, they don't care, but they know because America's the fucking shit. It's not perfect, but it's fucking way better than where the fuck I go on vacation. The other way is not true. So the ultimate indictment of the morality and real consequential effect of communism is communist countries, almost as a rule, are places from which it is illegal to leave. If it is illegal to leave from a place where you live in a jail. And any ethics or morality of how communism is superior has to contend with that first. And don't worry, there's no contending with it. Enjoy yourself in the comments. All right, last few points. 4 points on the way forward, kind of synthesizing all the upsides and downsides of communism. I think most of us can agree, I certainly agree, and hopefully you agree with me, that what we'd like to see from society is kind of similar stuff among all of us. Nobody's against clean streets. Nobody's against no one going hungry. Everyone's against no homeless people. Everyone has a home to go to, a place of residence. Everyone should be going to school and having basic health care. Nobody disagrees with that. Communists, capitalists, everyone's in the opinion that, yeah, that's the really good stuff that we want for everyone.
Actually, a lot of capitalists disagree with that. Let's be real.
Now, before we say how do we structure society so that gets us to that, we're going to hold off a second and re-examine what it is that generates wealth. All those things I just said, they require wealth. Someone has to be producing value.
Under a capitalist economy, they require wealth. That's a very big... It depends on the economic system. Again, lots of socialist ideologies explicitly want to abolish wealth.
For us to take some of that and help people who can't help themselves. If there's not a huge value production and everyone's poor as fuck, what are you going to do? Take from one guy to give to the other? That guy dies and that guy lives. That doesn't make any goddamn sense, right? It's like everyone on your basketball team sucks at playing basketball. Who are you going to ask for advice on the team? Like, can you watch my jump shot? Like, I don't know how to do a jump shot. Like, my God, we all suck. If only we had some people out here who could fucking play ball, they could use their surplus knowledge to help the rest of us lifting everyone up. So it's all about that surplus. It's all about wealth creation. We need to understand that markets are usually just way superior, especially in the long term, via innovation and allocation of scarce resources. They're just better at generating wealth. That is the very huge and ever-growing pie from which we slice out our nice communist intentions of helping the poor. So we have to be very concerned with, as caring people, as left-wing people, to effectively bring market mechanisms to bear on as much social good chasing as we can, both to generate wealth and also to run the systems. Sometimes market-oriented ways of helping the poor are just better because market-oriented systems, with their reliance on prices, just allocate resources better for almost any task whatsoever.
If we're talking about supply and demand, every single economy has to have that aspect in some form or another. But you can just use market socialism for that shit. You don't need a capitalistic one.
Now, point number 3. For anything that markets can't do super well, we can try to do through government. But we have to be very, very careful and do what's called good governance, which is a topic I'll cover on this channel at some point later. Create policies that are designed and overseen to have maximum effect with minimum perverse incentives and minimum corruption and minimum drift of incentives, where like you started this agency to do something, but now it kind of does something else and it doesn't really help anybody. This is a big deal. A lot of people think of government as a fix-all. You just give government money and it fixes the problem. Anyone who thinks that should go examine the homelessness situation in San Francisco, where last my update occurred, roughly $90,000 per homeless person per year was being spent by the government. But
Yeah,
90,000
San
is enough
Francisco's a fucking mess.
to get someone into a housing complex, to get them a staff of assistants and all the food and entertainment they'll ever need the rest of their lives. If 90,000 a year is what we're talking about. SOCOM, that hasn't been solved because governments generally suck dick at solving problems. That's not true everywhere. Governments in Sweden, in Finland, in Taiwan, their organizations work better. So we can work to better government and make sure that we are aware of the fact that governments don't come with solutions. They come with their own trade-offs. Sometimes those trade-offs are better than the ones
Doesn't
just
really
the
seem
market
like
gives.
there's
But they also have externalities. They also have lots of bumps in the road. So it's not good enough for us to be like, the market does most of the shit.
much else to say here.
Shit it can't do, we do through government. Just sweet government, take care of it. No. Government is usually incentivized very poorly to do things very well. The government is just a worse way of handling almost everything in the market. The market is just straight up superior. So if the market is not built for purpose for handling something, you don't just look at government and go, oh, don't worry, government's going to have this handled. It's like, okay, how do we make this program super well overseen, incentivized and constructed, such that it gives us marginally better returns over time? And because it's really well overseen, we make sure that we're always on the outlook for corruption. We're always on the outlook for grift. We're always on outlook to make sure that this good thing that we're doing started out good and is still good over time and maybe even better over time after that. Lastly, we want to have as big of a fraction as we can of our economy be free. Very minimum intelligent, but minimum regulations, largely free market, so that it can generate as much wealth as possible. You take that wealth that's ever grown, you take a relatively low tax rate off of it.
Obviously, I
most of that wealth
disagree
is better
with
used
that
in the
for.
economy as a whole to make everyone happy.
Whoops,
and the economy.
whoops. Fucking dumb. Obviously, I disagree with that for obvious reasons. I kind of border between decentralized planning and market. Personally, maybe a little bit of a both, which is why I said before I balance between collectivism and collectivist anarchism and participatory economics. I kind of float between those two. I maybe in the middle. Um, but yeah,
Economy even wealthier. So you want to leave most of
I do disagree with using like free market as much as possible because the market isn't fucking free. If you get a certain amount of people up there who can control and influence the rest of the market to a significant degree like we do now, then it's not really free. It's just being controlled by another class of people. Instead of the government, it's being controlled by private individuals, which isn't much better.
the fuck of it alone. You take a small slice.
It's arguably worse in my opinion.
Percentage-wise, and you take that slice and you feed it into the kind of caregiving socialist services that make all of society better off. Feeding the homeless, sheltering them, taking care of the very poor, of the elderly, of children, and all that good stuff. And because you never took too big of a slice of the pie to reduce the growth rate, this huge bubble fueled by innovation and freedom and greed really is always expanding. And so your maybe 20% slice of the pie that you get to do government services with, yes, it's always 20%, it never goes up. But the absolute amount of money, another way of putting it, the absolute amount of resources to help the less fortunate always grows, because 20% of a billion is dope. 20% of a trillion is way more fucking dope. As economies grow over time, we as caring people who care about those that cannot help themselves have to be number one concerned with expanding wealth. Number two concern is that some small slice of that gets to where it's supposed to. And the number three concern is once we have that wealth transferred to those people, we're doing it in a way that minimizes moral hazards, maximizes human flourishing, and prevents corruption and all that stuff from taking hold. If we can do that, we get the best of capitalism, we get the best of communism, and together they make Sweden and New Zealand and all these other fucking incredible places that everyone wants to live, and they're just better than the rest of the world. If we combine them poorly, we get China, which is not a place most people want to live. And if we don't combine them at all, and we do a lot of communism, well, we get like, I don't know, Turkmenistan or something. Actually, my dad's from there. Don't go there, it's not a good place to visit. Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in.
Okay, so in terms of his overall views, in terms of like his actual economic views, I don't think he's that bad. Social democratic, kind of free market. It's just like, I mean, he's better than like a typical conservative kind of thing, which is good. But at the same time, his views on what communism is are very fucking shoddy. I'm probably gonna have to make a video on this later, but I'm kind of running out of time to be able to do shit, so I'm gonna end it here.